Okay, well, thank you all for being here for the second half of the program. We wanted to have two brief items just before we begin. One is, again, reminding you about the Easy Voter Guides, and thank you to those folks who did sign up. There's an opportunity to sign up again before you leave this evening. And we would also, our second thing is to remind all of you who are here that next week, on October 15th, we will be hosting a voter education event in Woodland at the Woodland Senior Center. And we would hope that as many of you as possible will be able to attend, or at least let folks know that we're going to be doing that event. That event will be about helping people to understand Proposition 50, to understand what the issues are on the ballot, and to understand a little bit about returning their ballot and the dates and locations for voter returns for this election. The event will be live streamed. It will also be recorded to be able to be viewed after the event for those people who can't make it in person. But please encourage folks who are asking you, as members of the league, I know this happens very often, questions about the election and questions about receiving their ballot, returning their ballot, and what the darn issue is, to check out and find out, because our event is really designed to try and help our colleagues in the elections office to get the word out about information that voters are seeking. Particularly important to note is that the November election is a special election. It's kind of an off-cycle election. Those routinely have very low voter turnout. Unfortunately, those are also ones that are generally very important and very impactful. And this upcoming election is going to have to address the potential for a constitutional amendment. So we know that that's an impactful issue for voters to consider. With that bit of business out of the way, I'd like to turn the mic over to our Voter Services Director, Judy Higgerson, so that she can introduce this evening's speaker. Judy.
Thank you, Michelle. I too want to thank every single one of you for popping in tonight. You know, this means a lot to us because it supports exactly who we are, and that is that we're workers, we're doers, and we're accomplishers. Part of that accomplishment for me personally has had the pleasure of working with Jesse Salinas. I'm going to read what I wrote so that I don't miss any of it, but I might tell you a few other little things along the way. Jesse Salinas has served as our Chief Executive Officer in Yolo County since 2016. Following his initial appointment by the County Board of Supervisors, he's now been twice re-elected to serve as our county registrar voter, holding this office for the past 9 years. Thank you, Jesse. Under his leadership, the County Elections Office has successfully implemented the state's 2016 Voter Choice Act in Yolo County, which was a huge deal, big undertaking. I won't go into it, but those of you that know what our Voter Choice Act is, it's a lot of work. And again, we bless you, Jesse, for getting that out. It means that we have many more days to vote, many more days to get registered, and a lot of help to serve those that are at our polls. He's actually transformed, our local election operations by leading more timely and transparent reporting. For several of you that may have joined last week, the logic and testing operation that our elections office does for us, it continues to support what we and Jesse have done together in terms of educating our population about how safe, smart, and sound our elections are in Yolo County. And also making sure that he represents exactly what happens throughout the night, that he has to stand for us and announce those numbers. Jesse's also been known and acknowledged for some pretty cool, outstanding public service, both in the state and national, especially for the creativity and the strategies for outreach for reaching our underserved in this community. He's the recipient of the 2019 Guardian Angel award recognized from the National Association on Elected Officials. No lightweight tennis there. Jesse Salinas has led our county election office efforts to champion ballot accessibility innovations while promoting our community with youth registration and election participation. And a heck of a job. If you have not been to the Yes Youth Empowerment Summit, I highly encourage you to take the time next year in 2026. It is a killer program. So I welcome tonight Jesse Salinas.
Well, first of all, thank you, Judy. Appreciate the kind words, and thank you very much, everybody, for allowing me to be here today. Sorry, a little bit of jet lag. I came in from SoCal. There was an assessor conference this week, and it's been a busy day because we had something that just happened yesterday in Woodland where some clustered mailboxes were broken into. So it's interesting because when you look at it from that standpoint, our office found out about it. It happened in the morning. We found out about it yesterday afternoon, and in that 24-hour period, we developed an action plan, a response plan that we implemented right away. We worked closely with the post office to identify those specific, literally addresses that were impacted. We then were able to pull into the database the voters that were impacted. We identified that we wanted to give them replacement ballots, so we voided their previous ballots and we replaced them. And this is something that's pretty incredible. Our postal service, who gave us this information, wanted to step in, and this afternoon they did a hand delivery on all those addresses this afternoon. Pretty spectacular, right? And so this afternoon I had a lot of TV interviews because we put out a press release because we're all about transparency to explain what happened. And so I had GCRA, Channel ABC News, CBS News, they were all wanting to know what took place and how we did this so quickly. So we told our story here in Yolo County, and I think that's a success story about how quickly we responded and how no voter was disenfranchised from this experience. So just thought I'd share that because it's kind of a neat little story that I have a tremendous team, and this is Dulce over here. You get all meet, so thank you, Dulce. Dulce is our outreach specialist, and she does a lot of work in the community. And I'm going to go over a couple of key items because I do want to give a little background about all the things we are doing in Yolo County, and that makes us unique and special. Youth Empowerment Summit is one of them. And there's some other projects I'll talk to you about in a bit. So with that, Dulce, you could, please. So I want to give you a little sense of what the turnout has been. And this graph really shows you some of the earlier aspects of the turnout. And I want to highlight, if you take a look at that June 2014 election and the November of 2014, those data points are horrific, right? They are. That gives you an idea of what the turnout was. And you can see, compared, the green line above is the total registered voters, and that is the actual number of ballots cast on those bars. So I was brought in May of 2016, and I will do a shout out to Ivan Long, who's out here in the audience. He's one of my colleagues in the county administrator's office, because before taking this position, I worked with Ivan and some other wonderful people that were in the county administrator's office and Department of Finance as well. And I stepped into the role May of 2016, a month before that June 2016 election. And boy, what an election it was, let me tell you. The story I tell is I walked in and I had an opportunity to have that first experience. Really, quite frankly, it was still a bit shell-shocked. And I went to one of our statewide conferences, and I was standing next to one of my colleagues who had been doing it for 20 years. And I asked the question, I go, so was that typical? And she looked over at me and she goes, no. She goes, I've been doing this 20 years. That was the most intense election I've ever experienced. So that was my number one start. That was the easiest election, I can tell you. Since then, it's only gotten more challenging. But you see those data points, and I want to highlight that. So November, so what you see those high points 76% turnout, 83% turnout, 82%. Typically, on a general presidential election, it's always the apex of turnout. Right? People get excited about the presidential. I will say I'm pretty proud of the fact that when I looked at historically, so after we had that 83% turnout, keep in mind that was during the pandemic. And that is the first election where we switched over to the vote center model. And we had to out of necessity because I had 96 polling places. And if you recall, that you go back in time to March of 2016. The day before that election is when the pandemic was announced. And I had all these people that started to drop off from being one of our election work and actually working in a polling place. We called them poll workers at the time. And we had a lot of folks that just, we almost didn't make it. We were scrambling to find enough people to do that day because everybody was afraid. Right? What does this mean? And I remember I was concerned myself, but we had to have this election. So we checked in with everybody after that election and say, to give you an idea, 96 polling places, we had to have at least 4 in each one. Plus you had to have a waiting list. So we had over 400 people that we had to recruit for those elections, the way the poll worker elections worked. Well, when we called, we had about 50 people that said they'd be ready for November. And I had to come up with 400. So I knew I had a problem. So we started looking at what options we are. So I was very involved with the Secretary of State's office in helping to redesign what our options were in November. So in a lot of different meetings, that's when we decided to make the pivot towards the Voters' Choice Act. And at the time, we came up with a model called Voters' Choice Like, because it wasn't quite a full Voters' Choice model. We only had about 4 days, not some that were 11 days, but all the other ones were the same. And actually, what ended up happening, take a look at that result, 83%. I was stunned when I saw that. Wow, that was amazing. And I thought, well, how have we done historically? So I went back 20 years to see what were the high points in all those presidentials. And what was fascinating, for 20 years, it had typically been either 76% or 77%. We had plateaued for 20 years on back. It's like it had been consistent in Yolo County. So when I saw that 83, I was pretty excited. I said, that's great, but how does the next one work out? And you can see, nearly 82%. So we have hit a new level that is pretty special. In a second, I'm going to show you the statewide average and how this compares. But it's important for you to see this because one of the data points that I noticed in this, and you see it, is that all the non-presidential outdrops. And for those of you who don't know about my background, so when I was at graduate school, my first job was with the California School Boards Association. And I remember hearing about a special election in school boards where there was 8% turnout. 8%. And then you see that the struggles, again, the data is the data. It shows, number one, people show up for presidentials, they don't show up at the same level as the other ones. So I really want to emphasize the importance of local government, other races besides the presidential, and how important that is, which is part of why I've driven some of the change that I've done at the local level. In addition, there's other data that start to show you young people, those 18 to 24-year-olds, are not turning out. They're just not. But we have a different story here in Yolo County. I'll talk a little bit more about it. If you go to the next one, please. So this graph shows you that comparison to the statewide average. And what I want to highlight is we're pretty much in alignment, but we're a little bit under. So the Yolo County one is the lighter green one. So you can see we're a little above, and we match it, and we're a little above again, and then you see the pattern. Now, have you seen from after the 2020 election, we're a little bit above, and you see a gap starting to happen. That is Yolo County. We are separating ourselves from the statewide average. That's pretty significant. And a lot of those numbers are starting to happen with those 18 to 24-year-olds. The ones who are disengaged and disenchanted that's starting to change in Yolo County. And I'll tell you a little bit more why I think that is. So, next, please. So, but you saw that we're about 10% above the statewide average. That's what we're running at right now. The last couple of elections, pretty significant. Yeah. We were typically around it, the average, but we really separated ourselves. So I want to highlight, my staff puts it in there, that I'm currently serving as president of the California Association of Clerk and Election Officials. So I appreciate the shout out on that. It's created a bit of a challenge because I was sworn in as president July of 2024. And so I thought to myself, well, I'll get through the presidential, right? Survive the presidential. It was quite a presidential. There's a lot of statewide interviews and other things that people said, oh, just you'll get used to it. Don't know if that's true, but it got through it. I thought, okay, we're done. I get an off election cycle. I'm going to be done. I go till June of 2026. I'm good. And then all of a sudden, this announcement of a special election comes up, and I'm like, darn it, really? Okay, well, we'll get through it together, right? And it's like, and it just happened so fast. It happened so fast. And that's a story for another day, and the turnaround that had to happen, because everybody in our elections, those cycles are difficult. And you do look forward to a little bit of breathing, because you use the off years to kind of reassess a lot of the things and fine tune it. But there has been no off year, because if you look in 2021, there was a recall election. We had a little break in 2023, but here we are in 2025, and we're going again. But I wanted to share that with you. One of the other things I think is a highlight is our work in ESRI, which is the maps that you've seen, geographic information maps. We are recognized. In fact, ESRI is a international leader on mapping. They've highlighted us twice in their national newsletter because of what we do here in Yolo. It's like the things you see on CNN and you see it on national organization, Fox, I don't care, whatever news you want to look at. It's what people see, those ability to see the maps. We're doing that here in Yolo. We're in there with the best of whatever LA, the biggest counties, Orange County. We have this happening here. And ESRI is really proud of the work we've done together with them. And so they've highlighted us. We've also have a story where when I first came into the office in that June 2016, we were not performing well in terms of our language accents. And in fact, I received a letter from an organization, that's what they do, they review it, and there was a letter essentially saying, you're so bad, we're going to sue you and take you to court. And I remember calling my staff in and said, so is this for real? Is this a real organization? And they're like, oh, no, it's real. And I'm like, okay, great. So I invited them up to get to know me, and they said, yes, you're not meeting the legal obligation, you're doing this wrong. Again, I've been on the job a month and a half. So I was like trying to figure things out still, right? Because you listen and you observe, that's what you do. And again, I'm not trying to say this is how you should do things. I'm trying to be a learner in that context, but I heard that we were failing. And so I sat down and said, let's work together and let's fix this. So we were brainstorming with that organization, and we were the worst of the 32 counties that they were literally overseeing and doing their analysis of. We were the worst performing one in those 32 that they reviewed. Fast forward to November. I get a call because we were working and we were coming up with some new ideas. We really stepped in. I went to every single poll worker training, and I said, this is important. We have to do better. And I attended every one of them. And we made all these changes. December, I get the call. The president of that organization calls me up and says, Jesse, you went from worst to first. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I was so excited that he's like, can you be on panels with me? So I was on national panels, I was on statewide panels, because he really wanted to highlight the partnership and what we did together. And so that is one of the things where we were recognized in some of our work. Plus, more recently, this is something that we did recently that I'm quite proud of. So a foundation reached out to me and said, they're doing some pretty innovative work in San Mateo in terms of working with CBOs, community-based organizations. Would you be interested in doing it here in Yolo County? I said, yeah, what does that mean? I'd have to get a matching monies from the county that they would put in. They put in $50,000. And we started doing some innovative work with them. And so much so that a report is about to be released. And we're going to be doing a panel at the incoming Yolo statewide organization to share what we've done. Because when I heard what San Mateo did, I said, yeah, we're going to do one better. Because we created an app that allows community-based organizations, when they go knocking door to door, they visit places, an app that will report what they did when they visited people, if they actually were the door hangers or talked to people. And we're collecting that data because it's the beginning of really having incredible outreach, but we're focusing on reaching out to the low turnout populations because we did an analysis. And this is something the other group had never done before. We did an analysis. These are our low voter turnout populations. These are the language groups we want to be able to hit and actually engage. So we talked about, and I know we have one of the grant recipients, a couple in the audience, but we talked about reaching out to the Spanish-speaking community. We wanted to reach out to the Chinese-speaking community, the Korean community, the Punjabi community, and in West Sacramento, there's a large Russian-speaking population. And the first four that I referenced, we're required to reach out to them in that context as part of the Voters' Choice Act and part of our requirements with a piece of legislation that says these are the language groups you want to do outreach to. The Russian is specifically my selection to do that because when I went to those first couple of full worker trainings I talked to you about to change the tenor of all the discussions, what I kept hearing in West Sacramento is, what are you doing for the Russian population, speaking population? What are you doing? I heard it over and over again. So that's why we created that. Even though it's not legally a requirement, I heard the community speak out loud. So we provide that as well. But the reason I say that is we did this incredible outreach, and it was so neat to see engagement with the community-based organizations. And I think the League of Women Voters was at one point one of those organizations that we did work with. So it's a whole new model. Our goal is to share the learnings from that, to try and have the model, again, what we're doing in Yolo County. So, and then lastly, I did the national award that you were referring to is from the Election Assistance Commission for Outstanding Election Administration. So those beautiful maps that you see and our ability to use it during staffing during election, the Election Commission actually recognized that for outstanding administrative work in election. So that was also from a nonpartisan group as well. That was recognized nationally. So this gives you a quick little idea of our different accomplishments. Again, the transition to the Voters' Choice Act was a big win for us, and you have now the story behind that. So we also have a Language Accessibility Advisory Committee and an Accessibility Advisory Committee. I want to encourage you, if you know of people that can help us in those advisory committees, and I know we've had some of you assist us, please help get the word out because we want people from the community to participate. We want more. So I pound that drum every time I go out and speak. This is important because we want to hear from you and engagement about how we can do that. I think we're excellent, but I always think there's always room for improvement, and we need engagement from you and people you know to join us. And it's a great group. We have people who are participants in that and can talk about that in that context here. So please. And then, we ran a successful presidential, and we got the special elections. Go ahead and move on next, please. So to touch it quickly, we had this Youth Empowerment Summit, and I was pretty excited about it, folks. We engaged 140 students and 30 elected officials. So you remember that poll that I was showing the data points of how people don't show up as much in the presidentials? I hypothesis playing out here is that it's because young people, especially when you add that with the overlap of young people, they're not showing up at that other elections. It's because they don't understand how powerful and impactful local government is. For those of us that are aware of it, I've been with the county now more than 20 years. I've spent many of my 35 years professionally engaging at some level with local government. It's an amazing opportunity to engage and to have impact. So we started to create this Youth Empowerment Summit so it gives students an opportunity to sit down with local elected officials to talk about issues they care about. And so, and this isn't just alone, we're doing it in partnership with the County Office of Education. And we're doing it with the school districts, different community parts. League of Women Voters has been a partner with us for many years now. And we also have had just really tremendous support from the city, the county, and we have sponsorships from Nugget Markets. I mean, it's been a wonderful partnership to make that happen. To bring that many students, and we bring them to the art over at UC Davis. We bring them from across the county and get a chance for them to talk to their electeds about issues. And in fact, our Congressman Thompson, it was the first time he had showed up, and he came up to me and goes, "That was amazing. I'm going to be back here next year." And the Registrar of Santa Cruz, Registrar of San Joaquin, the Registrar of Marin, the Registrar of Napa were all there to observe. And they're going, "Wow, we want to be able to replicate this." So others across the state are getting our cue in what we're doing. I do want to say, so we have this really neat process where we develop a mock election. And the ballot looks like an official ballot. So they get a chance to vote and experience it. And it's data from literally a national polling information where they get to 24-year-olds and we ask them these questions. And then we compare their votes to that. We show it in lifetime right after they voted. We give them a lunch break and we calculate it and we show these pie charts so that we compare where they are on issues like climate change or AI and so forth. But what we did, because the timing worked out great, we asked them, "What's your view of Proposition 50?" So again, everything we do is neutral and we are nonpartisan and not, we provide an analysis. So I myself drafted a one-sentence pro and con statement that was literally neutral on both sides to say these are the basic arguments of those this ballot measure. And we kept it on there exactly as written. I mean, it's what you all are seeing on your ballot. And we let the students vote on it. And what was interesting is 73% of the students said yes, that they did yes on that vote, which is fascinating. So I told them the reason I said that is that I want you to go and track this election to see how you and your vote and this outcome compares to the overall. So I'm trying to get them to get engaged, right? Because the idea is get engaged, think about elections, be involved. And the other thing we did, which is a new thing that we added that I think was a huge hit, is we added nonprofits in the afternoon so people can understand the different services that are out there. So if they want to volunteer and get involved, it's about civic engagement. So it's a whole new evolution of how we think of things and how we engage our young people. Because I don't want them disenfranchised. I want them engaged in our community. So, and this is why it's a national award-winning program. Go ahead, next one. So this is a little background. Now we're going to jump into a little bit more of Prop 50 in particular. So the background is back in 2008, right? Voters voted for the Citizens Redistricting Commission. It's a 14-member. That's how it's broken up. 5 Dems, 5 Republicans, 4 not affiliated. And the idea was that for them to draw the lines. And that's how it's been in place. When you think about it, the reason is they wanted to keep it as nonpartisan as possible. That was the whole model that was passed. And the idea was after the census is done, you have a new count, and you get an idea of the latest numbers, and you use that. And it's supposed to stay for 10 years. Well, the idea is it was to promote fairness, transparency, and voter representation. That's the model that was in existence. And if you want to go next. So just a little bit of a background on the 435 congressional districts. Its populations means more districts. This is something you all know because you're all very involved with that. So it does have an impact, gerrymandering and its initiation, which is those crazy lines that get drawn to essentially favor one party over the other. That's how I describe it for folks. And it does exist in other states. There's elements of that in every state, just hands down. So, but this gives you a little background on that, if you want to go to the next one. So I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but I think it's important to have that as a grounding. We all know that there was a movement in Texas to redraw their congressional districts before the 2030 census period. And it was to advance one political party over the other. And what happened is that, this was the idea is this is going to have a shift in the 2026 election. So that's what was driving Texas movement on that. And California felt they wanted to offset those five. It was literally referred to as the 5 districts that they wanted to get in Texas. So California decided that the legislature decided they wanted to be able to counter that or mitigate that. And by doing that, they had to create this election that requires a vote of the people. In Texas, they could just do it legislatively, which they have. In California, you got to take it to the voters, which is why this election exists. So it is, a response to the overall what's happening in Texas was why we did it. We were asked as election officials to kind of give an idea of the cost. The cost of what's if the voters decide yes. It's not the cost of running the election. The running of the election is expensive. It's nearly in the ballpark of $250 million to run the election. Once it's decided, if it's decided that we want these new lines, you still have to, in the state, redraw the lines. So we still have work to be done if the answer is yes by voters. And that's going to be a few $1 million. So that's actually the cost of the yes, if it's voted on yes, and this follow-up to execute the congressional lines. And go next. So what's interesting about Prop 50 is that it's a temporary until after up until the 2030 census is redone, right? Once we do the 2030 census, there'll be a new 2031 redrawing. So this isn't permanent, it's a temporary step that the way the legislation is written. And at that point it goes back to the redistricting commission to utilize that. If voters reject Prop 50, then there's no changes. If the voters say yes, okay. If it passes Yolo County, so we looked at it, we would go from 2 congressional representatives to 3. So we would have 3 in Yolo County. And of course, as the saying goes, the more representation, the more your voice is heard in the legislative process. And again, if it doesn't pass, then everything remains the same. So it just gives you a context in Yolo County. Okay. So one of the things we've had to do is we've been working extensively with the Secretary of State, even when working hard. For example, when this decision came down to do this, I spent time in the Capitol so that Yolo County didn't pay for it, but the state paid for it because this was their doing. I'm happy to say they did answer that call, and so we are not putting the bill here locally, which is important. But in terms of the overall process, so we've been moving with the Secretary of State's office and all of the steps, because in the process, we typically start planning 6 months ahead of time. In fact, for some of our reservations of facilities, we booked them. I've already got the booking for all of the 2026 elections reserved. So we're more than a year out. We're already knowing the elections are, so we're reserving locations. One of the more challenging parts of this election was the fact that it was such a short period of time that we didn't have spaces for everything. But because it's a special election, there's a provision in the law that allows us to not have as many vote centers throughout, because again, it takes time. A big space like this is actually one of our spaces. Thankfully, it was open for the 11 days, so we got it here. We have one at City Hall, and the other one is at the admin building in Woodland, so we have a little bit more control of that one. And then we're going to have a location opened up in the winters, and all of our drop boxes are going to still be used, so all 15 are going to be available. And I share that with you because it really, we've begun our process. In fact, we talked about the logic and accuracy test that was done. And that's to make sure that the software, before we actually start counting the ballots, is accurate. We literally check every permutation possibility. It's like a pretest. So you're a teacher, you have the answer key. It's preloaded in terms of all of the printing options. We feed it through to make sure that we get the results we want. So when we actually start counting the real votes, we know that the system, the software is working the way it's supposed to. That's called a logic accuracy test, which is LAT for short. And so we actually invite people. We did it. Judy and others showed up, which is great. And it just gives people confidence that it's happening. And when I first got here, I started putting out press releases saying, come watch this, come be a part of this. Once you've seen it, it's a little bit like paint drying because just doing that. But the first time I invited, because nobody ever actually invites the press to do that, I had couple of people with cameras there going, is this it? Yeah, no, this is it. Okay, so, but they came. And so we try to make it open and accessible and available for folks. And then, again, just that we talked about, we just this past week sent out the ballots, so you probably have all gotten your ballots. And if you don't, contact our office because you should have it. If you want to go on to the next one. So we're going to have 3 vote centers that are open for those 11 days. And we're going to have 6 vote centers in total open on election day. And the reason that we have that is, so one of the locations that's a big location is our on-campus location. What we have found, and this is one of the nuances of how elections has changed, you can walk in and register and vote on the same day. It's called conditional voter registration. So what happens here in Yolo, we are unique. Yolo is so unique in so many ways. It's the Yolo way. So where we get an incredible volume, one of them is this location. There's a lot of students that live in this area. But the art ballroom on campus is just inundated with students that they don't vote Saturday, Sunday, Sunday, a little bit more on Monday, and then they all show up on Tuesday. It's just, the volume is just amazing. So the art ballroom, which is a big room, it's like an 70 by 90 space. It wasn't available for the 4 days. So I had to reach out to the chancellor's office and say, they gave us a room that is about half the size. And I said, do you realize what that's going to do on election day? And they're like, yes, but it's already been booked. Because we're so late in the process, right? And I'm like, please tell the chancellor, I don't want to be on the news having to explain why we have a 6-hour wait because we don't have enough space there. And so they worked on it. And 48 hours later, they're like, we bumped the other ones, we put you in on election day. And I go, thank you. Yes. The cloud has fallen that one because they understood how important this was. So we actually have 2 locations. We have the smaller room for the other days, but on election day, we're going to take the bigger one as well. So we're trying to, because what happens, why that's so significant is the conditional voter registration on the turnout statewide is anywhere from 2 to 3%. The number 2 county in the entire state is Sacramento County at just about 3%. Yolo County is 5%. 5%. It's pretty amazing, right? And I tell people, we're in a whole different world here. We are. And because of that, it takes us a little longer. We have to process it, right? Because the way it works, we process is vote by mail will come in, we check all the signatures, and we validate it. Great, we get it ready for printing. That's why our tally and actually processing. That's why at 8 o'clock, we can't tally until 8 o'clock because the polls haven't closed. That's why if you're wondering, how is it at like 8:10, 8:15, there's all these initial results? It's because all those vote by mails that come in and anybody who's voted to a vote center before, we're able to load into the database, but we do not tally them, which is process them to actually calculate. We can't do that until after 8 o'clock. So I want to invite all of you, and this is, Judy knows this, she's been there. I invite everybody to come see our election process. It's amazing. It's an adrenaline high. That's what I'll say. It's just exciting to see our democracy at work and how it all comes together. It's incredible. So we invite people, and they come and they just love it. And we are repeat They're repeat visitors on this one. But I say that because what we have to do is we do that at 8 o'clock and then all the live ballots that we pick up. But essentially 40 to 50% of people wait till election day to finish. So there's a lot of vote by mails that get dropped off in our ballot drop boxes and either at a vote center or they put it in the mail as long as it's postmarked by election day. So that's why we have so much volume that still comes in afterwards. As long as it's been dropped off by 8 o'clock at a vote center or at a drop box. We have people right there that are waiting till 8 o'clock, and if you're in line yet, great. If you're not, sorry, cut off the line. We get folks to drop off those ballots, and then we pull out all of those ballot drop boxes, and we empty them out, and we lock it up, say it's done, and then they bring it back that evening. So all of that is happening on election night. So it's a great process. If you want to be involved with that, you can observe that as well. So I say that because we do those processing of all those, and then the conditional voters registration, we wait till later. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure people don't vote twice. Because if somebody votes by mail and then they try to register and vote again, we can stop. So nobody can vote twice by this process. We're actually exploring if it's possible to do a piloting of some instant CVR. So we're going to see, because this would be it's not a complex ballot, and so this might be a good process to be able to do that. So staff is exploring that still. We're still having to make a final determination if we're going to do it, but that would help speed up the process. So you can see we have 15 drop boxes. We have quite a bit going on, and that addition of the art ball is critical. Yes, sir.
You said you invited us to come and walk.
Yes.
Where?
So thank you. It is at the Yolo County Administrative Building. It's at 625 Court Street, and it's down in the basement. Yes, we're down in the basement. But we encourage you to contact us. You can come see it. It is, in fact, I'm trying to get youth to come see it. I've done something called a youth bash where we bought pizza and youth come and I gave tours. So I'll give tours. I'll invite people because I want them to see it firsthand. We're really excited about our democracy at work. You want to go to the next one? Okay, so it's all right. Let's give you a picture. So one of the things that's happened, and you see that little picture up in the top, that is our mobile vote center. We use it in the rural communities. We're not going to be able to use it this time because it's going to save as our emergency backup. In case one of the locations go down, we keep it on election day for emergency backup. But we use it on more standard elections. Again, this one happened so quickly we weren't able to do it, but we take it throughout the rural community because they shared with me, Jesse, you only have it in the larger cities. And I'm like, well, the legislation has some guidelines, but we bought that special unit, and it was because I was very thrifty in how I use my resources. And I thought, these are one-time dollars, I'm going to use it for a long-term impact. And so we use it for that. We're looking for ways to also use it for some of our other services, because I'm also the clerk, I'm the assessor, and the recorder. So we have some other ideas of how to use that in other contexts. To the right is what we call our Agilist machine. So it comes in and we get all these ballots. It can process 20,000+ ballots in an hour. But they're envelopes. It's just reading it. It grabs the signature and it allows us to do a pull-up and to compare what the signatures are compared to the signatures we have on file. And if it's a perfect match, then it says, yeah, this is a good match. Anything that's challenged is passed on and put in a different file that's reviewed by staff. We're now running about 25%, give or take, on the approval of the Agilist using those language learning machines to identify that. But the staff has to do all the rest themselves. So any questions, there's multiple checks, and if they challenge it and there's issues, they send letters to anybody whose signature isn't matching, so we try to reach out to them to try and cure those. And that's part of that process afterwards that we work on. So you can just see this is the team at work, different parts of the location. And one of the things I would like to just kind of touch upon, because I know we've come to the end of the presentation. So when I talked about our outreach to young people, Youth Empowerment Summit is amazing. We impact 140 kids. But I knew when I did that 8 years ago, the following year I said, but I can only impact 100 or plus to 200 kids. And we found, how do I impact more? So I started a project with the County Office of Education, and it was to start to rewrite the curriculum to push that message further about the importance of civic engagement, the importance of local government, and to also teach them media literacy, to go over, not to just, you see something on TikTok doesn't mean it's accurate. How do you cross-reference your information so you become informed voters, informed individuals? So we have a media literacy unit. And so what we've done, we received about almost $250,000 from the J.B. McClatchy Foundation to build some fundamentals. We worked with the U.S. History and Social Science Project to flesh it out a little bit more, because those are the educators, those are the people who write curriculums. And we started to build a nice model. And then earlier this spring, we received a little over $500,000 from the SAC, it's called the California Serves Grant from the state, because they want us to expand it. Now we're not just going to focus on high school, we can go K to 12, which is exciting. But we just found out about 3 weeks ago that U.S. History and Social Science Project, believe it or not, just received nearly a $2 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education. So now we've got state and federal folks that are looking at what we're doing here in Yolo County. And it's nonpartisan. It's like, how do we engage our young people? How do we help them to think critically? How do we teach them about the importance of local government, how to have a voice, how to get civically engaged? That to me is the holy grail. Because if we can help our young people, so those data points that show how they struggle, and if you look at the data points for our 18 to 24-year-olds in Yolo County, we are at the top of the charts in the state now. And I'm proud of it, because it started literally 8 years ago with the Youth Empowerment Summit, and then the curriculum and the work we've been doing over 7 years, that's 7 years in the making. Now we're getting traction. Now we're getting interest by the legislature. So Senator Curry early on covered got in some legislation for us, but the time wasn't right. So now we've got this other momentum, and we're going to revisit it, because I want to build a model here in Yolo County that other registrars across the state want to replicate, because they're coming to watch us. And I can tell you right now, the LA registrar, as he's seen the curriculum that we're building, he wanted to use it right away. I said, it's not quite yet. It's a prototype yet. We're piloting it. Once it's ready, then we'll do it. So others across the state are seeing what we're doing, and I think it's something to be proud of. And I take a lot of pride in the amazing staff that I have that makes that happen. So with that, I think that's the last of it. And these are our handles. We've created since 2017 or so. I think it was starting the second year. We started creating these different handles because we want to be able to reach people in different forms. And Dulce, if you haven't been following her, start to watch the handles. She can tell you about it. She does an amazing job, with the work that she does. Other people across the state are saying, I'm following Dulce. She does a really good job for you all. So she's doing a great job. So with that, I think we are done. And now I'm here to take any questions you may have. Yes?
I'm just curious, how many people have already sent in their ballots?
Great question. I was away this whole week, so I don't know the answer. I'll be able to tell you, because we're about to do a report that is going to come in on Friday. So I don't have that number, but I'll be able to tell you that number. In fact, we'll probably post some information on that, on the update of that. I don't have the actual number, because people got it probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I don't, early on, there'll be some UACAVA, which is overseas military voters that have started to come in, but it's still early in the process. My guess is tomorrow, this weekend, and next week, you'll start to see a bigger flow, because it takes a couple of days.
As soon as I got it, I put it in the mailbox. I didn't blow it.
Okay. No. In fact, where's my ballot is something that we have information on. So you can actually get text messages or a call or an email to tell you where it is in that streaming process. So when it comes to our office, we'll scan it in that machine that you see, which, by the way, it's a $250,000 machine. And I also got $110 to buy that because I knew it would last. Anyway, the nice thing is we load it up and you'll get messages that we received it. And if it gets approved for processing, we'll tell you that. If it's got issues, we'll reach out to you to say, hey, we need you to help us because we have some issues with the signature. So if you want to, and Melissa can talk more about that on the Where's My Ballot, because it's something we really encourage people so they can track where it is in that process. Yes?
I was one of the people who was invited early on to do how you count a ballot. And in our league registering people to vote, particularly after the 2016, I used those examples that you guys showed me when you're counting ballots to reassure people that their ballots are safe. And the example was when your staff was checking the ballots that had been kicked out of the machine. The example I gave was a husband and wife signed their office. The husband signed the woman's ballot, and she signed his ballot. And so your staff was calling them and saying, your ballots are mixed up when you come into the office. And so I use that example when people are questioning us, when we're tabling and registering people to vote, to reassure them that your organization is top of the line.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And it does happen. People, it happens not that much, but it happens periodically. Like, oh, this is one of the household switches. Okay. But we've been, I'm glad you're sharing that story because I think it is helpful to have. So it's great. And then was there another hand up here that, yes?
22, 23, grand jury chatted quite a bit about the process in 2022. And one of the things we talked about then was concern about having money to be able to do the update of your electronic systems and everything. So given the fiscal challenges, federal, state, and everything going on, are we still on track to be able to update that wonderful equipment when it's necessary?
So as of now, we have one of my goals, as I'm working things at a statewide level right now, is getting the legislature to think of a reserve, a technology reserve for elections in particular. It hasn't happened yet, and I think timing is everything. Because right now the legislature is focused on this, but they're also there's a lot of cuts and other challenges that are happening. So you have to wait till the pendulum kind of swings back where there's opportunities for that. We still have a few more years that our equipment should be okay for a few more years, but you don't want to wait until last time. So when I came into the office in 2016, the equipment we had were still, this is 2016, right? I'm talking about 2016, 2017. We were in the legislature talking, and I came up with the term that we were living on borrowed time. And actually, the LA Registrar did a press conference because he was president of the association at the time. He says, "Can I use that term?" I go, "Yeah, sure." He did. He used it in his press conference, and he goes, "Yeah, we're living on borrowed time." And I teased him afterwards. Hey, you didn't give me any credit on that. That was mine. But we went in the Capitol and we got funding at that time. The tough part is we were literally using systems that were on Windows 2000 in 2016. And that was not great because at that time Microsoft was no longer supporting it. So we had a great case to be made back then. Now, we've upgraded, right? This is 2018, 2019, but now we're like 5-6 years in. The equipment is still good for a few more years, but we need to start having the conversation, and that's one of the things I want to make sure, because I would love to have a fund set aside that the legislature puts there and says, as counties need to replenish and refresh and update, that it's there for them. Because we don't want to ever be there again where we're living on borrowed time. So thank you for asking that. Still a work in progress. I'm just thrilled about the things we did do with the funding we did have, because those things that we've done have transformed how we operate. Some of my colleagues were just trying to survive, and so they were using it for the moment. They weren't thinking how anything that is, a one-time fund, you got to use it in a one-time purchase to have a long-term impact. So my background was doing budget and policy for the CEO's office for a decade beforehand. So the understanding of how to utilize that came in handy for me on that one, because I know we've used those dollars extremely well. So great question. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for being here this evening, Jesse. I really appreciate it. And I want to start with a very heartfelt thanks for everything that you and your awesome staff, including Dulce and also Melinda and Net, I mean, everybody does to support voting for the whole community. And it is truly a whole community approach. I think that comes through with the Voters' Choice Act model of election administration, but also the really deep support for the LAC, the Language Accessibility Advisory Committee, and VAC, Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee. The Youth Empowerment Summit's fantastic, but that I also just want to give a shout out for that there's also really strong support for voters who have all sorts of access and functional needs, whether it's language or age or disability, whether it's apparent to others or not. And I know one of the discussions that's kind of come up within the Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee has been making sure that the people who use American Sign Language have full access to being able to vote and getting the information. And I know it's so hard to access people who can do ASL interpretation. Given that you also have a statewide role, I'm hoping that you might be able to give us just kind of an idea of what's happening locally, but also if there are any statewide discussions about this, in terms of like video interpretation or different approaches.
So it is, a lot of it is getting access to individuals that can provide these services, and that is a challenge. And I would say it's not a challenge when we're building our committees to find people that can speak these different languages to be a part of it. So there's a resource limitation just because there's not a whole lot, but there's also, if you think about it statewide, to be able to find these folks. So I think there's discussions at the state level, how do we engage more people to be available for those resources? And I know those are discussions that are being had. And this really being driven by the Secretary of State's office in terms of guaranteeing those, because they have statewide voter accessibility committees that they have. So that's part of that conversation. I know for us, we're always trying to find ways and resources to pay for that and making it happen. So getting back, for example, on the language stuff, you need somebody who's certified. So I can't just pull anybody off the street and say, hey, can you translate this to me in Punjabi? They have to be a certified, state certified translator. So there's requirements of the state that fall into this. The challenge, this is part of the discussion that's happening at the statewide level, is advocates are trying to say, well, maybe you don't need to have state certified people to work on this thing. That's a slippery slope, right? Because sure, I can speak Spanish. Dude says better in Spanish than I am, but I don't know if you want both of us to be sitting there translating a document that, I mean, I can read something and understand it, but even then, heck, in English, some of this stuff doesn't make sense, right? I mean, how you read some of these ballot initiatives, I have my master's in public policy, and I go, huh? I don't have to reread it once or twice just to be able to understand it in English. So when you start doing these translations, you want to make sure you have people that are qualified to do that. And I think that's the other challenge. So I know there's discussions happening on that. I just know there's not a clear answer. I just know it starts with the conversation and getting the conversation started and this happening. So with that, thank you for that question. Great. Anything else? Yes.
Just a quick, having had the opportunity to observe some of the additional machines and equipment that is available for those that need special assistance. Can you talk just a little bit about those machines?
Sure.
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, are there machines that can assist people who have specific needs? And there are. We have machines. We have 3 of them at every vote center. And these are people that may have visual challenges that they're trying to overcome, right? Or there are other types of physical challenges, some different types of things that they are dealing with. So they have an ability to access this equipment that can provide an audio, it can tactical, it's different types of it. It can blow up the screen bigger. I mean, there's different things that these machines have, and there's by law, there's 3 of them at every vote center. And this gets back to part of the question that I think was asked before, which is we try and share that information. And that's why the VAC, for example, the Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee is so important, so the community who has needs for these specific needs in particular know that that's available to them at a vote center. So there are machines that can really, pretty amazing machines. And we actually do, in the past, we've actually had about kind of open trainings and introduction of this equipment so the community can come see it. And I know we've had people that have come to check it out, and those on the Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee have actually had a chance to use it and experience it. So yes, they're there, they're available. You can contact our office. In fact, a lot of information is in the voter information guide as well. So we have information in there. We have information about the VAC and the LAC, as we call it for short, the language and accessibility committees, voter accessibilities. So there's great items available for you to be able to vote if you have these specific needs in particular. So how do we get the word out? If you know of anybody that's in need of that. Great question. Any other good questions out there? I've taken up probably more of your time than you wanted, but yes.
I did wonder about the drop boxes.
Yes.
What happened with nuggets? Yes. The video about the boxes and the boxes with boxes that is secure.
So yes, they are secure. So I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're chained. They're down behind. We literally chain them, so nobody can just run out with them. And all of the Nugget, by the way, proud of our partnership with Nugget Markets. I get so many compliments about, I love going to Nugget and being able to vote. And they've been wonderful partners. And I think, a shout out to them. And we've had a couple of other stores that have been partners for years. So yes, and if you notice, so what happens is stays open until their place closes, right? But if you notice, it's always towards the front or viewable. So always there's something, people can have eyes on it, plus they have cameras over there, so they're available. But the reality, it's indoors, so when the store closes, accessibility to that closes. But we also have some 24/7 boxes that are outdoors, but those things are like tanks, they're pretty solid. In fact, this last year, it's probably one of the reasons she gets this democracy award. Right? We had a conversation. She came up to me and she goes, "Can I get one of those 24 boxes on my campus?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's make it happen." So, and in fact, I'm having conversations with the Winters city manager because that's the one city we don't have a 24/7 box. So I said, "You want to do one?" And he goes, "Yes, let's do it." So yeah, so you got some insider info there. So he wants to do that, and but the idea is making it as accessible as possible. So it's secure, it's inside, it's all those that are in the Nugget Markets. If you notice them, we want to just have it so people have eyes on it regularly, and that's where it's always available, which is great. But it is secure, and you can't run off with it. It literally is chained. We come in and we chain it. So somebody will get hurt if they try to run off with it. But thank you. Yeah. Others? Any other questions? So with that, I'm glad that you have a chance to hear about all the amazing work that my staff has been doing in Yolo County. So proud of the work they've done. All this would not have been possible without them. So I thank them every time that all the great work that they do. And thank you for being amazing supporters of ACE, as we call ourselves, the Assessor Recorder and Elections Office. All right, thank you so much.
That man talk, I feel more and more confident about the safety and security of our vote in this county. So I thank you, and I thank your tremendous staff and the work that they do. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I have a couple other shout-out thank yous to do. First of all, I want to note that another Prior Democracy Works Award recipient has joined us. That's Kate Laddish, who also won in 2023 for her work with Democracy Winters. So we thank you very much for the work that you do. And just as a final shout out to the folks who work for the Davis Parks and Rec, who helped us to have access to this facility and support it this evening. And again, Davis Media Access for the work that you all do. And thank you very much for making this a recorded event that will be available. You can follow up on this event if you want to by going to our website. You'll see the link to the recorded event. You can also check out our website, which is lwvyolo.org, which you can use to sign up or recommend for other people to sign up for our event that's coming up next week on Prop 50. So again, the work that you all do, thank you so much for being here this evening. Have a great rest of your evening and drive safe.